Hello and welcome back to episode 4 of the Excurse, and today I am joined by Joe. Joe Kelly, how are you doing, sir?
Hello. Yeah, I'm doing all right. Yeah, it's been a nice
Excellent.
day so far.
Excellent. And I turned your audio on this time, so we're off to a better start already.
Yeah.
So Joe, your like list of the list of things you do is kind of endless. So obviously, voice acting, an on-screen actor. You're a filmmaker. You're a musician, and of course, you have your new audio series coming out soon, Aniline City, which obviously can't wait to talk about too. Um, but and you've also just seen a film that I'm very curious about. I've heard mixed things, so I'm curious to get your opinion on Welcome to Raccoon City. Um, but I guess to start with, I guess let's just start with voice acting. I mean, you've been
Sure.
voice acting for how long now? Was it a lifelong passion to do voice acting, or did you
No,
fall
I
into
mean,
it?
I kind of fell into it. Well, I think if I'd known it was the possibility of a job when I was younger, I would have
Yeah.
been like, yes, I want to do that. That sounds great. But it just wasn't kind of on my radar. It's not something that people tend to talk about. People tend to talk about acting, and because I mean, voice acting is acting first and
Yeah.
foremost. That's the big part of the skill. But obviously, there are nuances within that and differences between screen acting, stage acting, and voice acting, and there's a few others as well. But no, I started out when I was very young. Friends of mine started messing around with camcorders. You know, the mini DV tapes. You know,
Yep.
slotting those
Yep.
in and creating films in that way. And so, we would just mess around and try and film our own things. And, we were editing by having two VCR players and sort of playing on one and recording on the other and, having to make scenes that way. And obviously they were terrible, but fun. And it just sort of progressed onwards from there. And initially it was stuff behind the camera. It was, oh, I'll help you carry your stuff, or
Yeah.
I'll hold the camera whilst you're setting up the lighting. And then it was, oh, well, I've watched somebody do this on the lighting, so I can do a bit of lighting. And oh, I can do some boom work. And last time I did boom work, I then, yeah, I could see how somebody was recording the audio, so I can do that. And yeah, you
Hmm.
just slowly start doing more and more. And it got to the point where it was, oh, we don't have an actor for this scene. Do you want to step in front of the camera? Yeah, sure. I'm
Hmm.
not doing anything else and enjoying acting. And I did drama in school for a while, and was in sort of school plays and things like that. And I enjoyed myself every time when I did it, but wasn't ever a fan of stage work, sort
Right.
of theatre work,
Hmm.
amdrams and stuff, which is pretty much all they teach you in school. They don't really teach you acting per se, or
Yeah, I
or,
always
or
remember it being very
film acting.
focused that way. Yeah.
Because I mean, obviously, to be part of school, it's usually, oh, well, we're going to do Shakespeare, or we're going to
Yeah.
do this, and it's, yeah, sure, which was just didn't appeal to me. But when it was starting to step in front of the camera as a teenager in these films, I was like, this is fun. I enjoy this.
Mm.
But to me, looking the way I did, I didn't see, it's like I'm not going to get the leading man role, and I'm not going to get the romantic lead, or
Right. Okay.
or even the sort of lead villain
Hmm.
in a role or anything like that. It was always going to be uh, sort of ancillary roles. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it just, the limitations were there. When the opportunity came up for a voice acting role, I was like, yeah, I'd love to do that. And it was on a series called Supermarket Matters, where it's about a large chain supermarket coming to small town Wales, and sort of the trials and tribulations of the staff there, and what happens concerning it. And the doors of the supermarket were fitted with an AI learning chip, and I became the voice of the doors. And it was
Amazing.
really, it was such a fun role. The local kids teach it how to swear, and it starts to have glitches in the system as squirrels are chewing on the wires and stuff. So the role itself ended up being this wild role anyway, and after a couple of episodes, it became a a character that a lot of the people listening to it really enjoyed. So they wrote it into a bigger role, and it became bigger, and it went on for a couple of seasons, and we did some Christmas and New Year specials as well. And I just had a blast. They did a lot with the character, which meant that I got to have fun with it and be silly. And the stores get shut down and get rebooted and become a child that goes through teething and
Brilliant.
teenagehood and
Okay.
adulthood, and then becomes an old man door and
Nice.
things like that. You know, the teenage door gets a crush on the automatic checkouts and things like that. It's a great series. It was really fun. It was a fantastic cast, crew, and writing that was going on with that. And I was spoiled really, because it was just such a lovely way to suddenly go, this is what voice acting is, and I fell in love with it. Absolutely fell in love with it. And from that point onwards, it was like, when can I do more of this?
Yeah.
How can I find more of this? And then I just started getting in front of a microphone. I was already a singer, so voice work and microphone work and studio work,
You were kind of
recording in that
comfortable with
way,
that.
it was something that I was already used to doing. Only this
Mhm.
time I was getting to talk to myself for a living. So I was like, this is great. And I started doing it little by little, just little part-time stuff. And it would be after my day job, I'd go home, do some voice acting, and then have dinner and relax. And it just sort of did that every day, every day, every day, a little bit more at the weekends, a little bit more at the weekends, and it started to pay. And I was like, "Oh, there's money in this. This is nice. It's an extra beer down the pub, or
Yeah, it's nice, like extra on top of your day job. Yeah.
yeah, yeah." And then it was just sort of like, well, hang on a second. From these jobs, I've now earned enough that I can get a better microphone and
Hmm.
I can get better equipment, and then I got started getting better jobs, and then my day job came to an end. The owner of the company passed away. The subsequent owner then sold the business, and I was without a job. And I was like, well, I can either be upset about being without a job, or I can take my end of work sort of severance pay and go, well, this is an opportunity. I can
Yeah.
give this a go full time. And I did, and I am still a full time voice actor. So I'm
Fantastic. Yeah.
doing something right, as it were. So yeah, it's led on to doing audiobooks with Audible. I do commercial work, corporate work, animations, video games, audio dramas, and kind of everything in between. Really, it's turned into a really varied job role.
I was gonna
Uh,
say that
well,
your like list of roles is massive. I mean, is it joekelly.info, I think?
JD
Or
Kelly.
JD Keller.
Yeah,
And
as a stage name, I go by JD Kelly.
sure, yeah, yeah. And I noticed, like, just going through that list, I was like, wow, I mean, like you said, audiobooks, you've done like some historical stuff. Yeah, loads of video games, which obviously close to my heart. And some video game documentaries, which I'd love to hear. I'd love to listen to those, like 101 Amazing Facts ones. Those sound really interesting. I never knew you did those. So yeah, it's really varied, and it's kind of interesting that I've always wondered how you kind of take that plunge to go from, like, I'm enjoying doing this as some extra cash, to I want to do this professionally. And it's interesting that, I guess, lucky for you, or luckily for you, in the long run, your old job kind of forced your hand, or at least gave you the opportunity to be like, let's start.
Yeah, I mean, I'd already been thinking, like, if you can save up enough money so that you've got a buffer, that's the important thing. Because
Hmm.
obviously, in a job like voice acting, you're going from contract to contract, and your pay isn't regular. It's really erratic. Like, you'll get paid sometimes a week after you've done a job. Sometimes it'll be 3 months after a job, and you need to be able to. If you do the work in month one and aren't getting paid until month four, 3 months later, you've got money to eat into, and then you get paid to replenish that buffer. So, uh, whenever somebody's thinking of making that plunge, I tend to recommend that they have an amount of buffer money to, where's my rent check coming from?
Hmm.
How can I pay my rent or my mortgage or whatever, or whatever payments, your phone payments or
Yeah.
internet, so on and so forth. Everybody's got things coming out of their account, and if you don't have the money in the account, then you're in trouble. So having that kind of buffer in your account or in a second account or whatever
Yeah.
means you've got that ability to be flexible on your pay dates and do work and get paid, and that's part of the tricky scenario of being self-employed in a job where it's contract to contract basis. It's
Yeah. So I
has
guess,
has that trick.
and I guess the redundancy money kind of gave you a slight buffer, did it? Enough so that you felt like, I can give this a shot.
Yeah, I'd already saved up some already, and then the redundancy money then allowed me to go, right, well, I've got that buffer now that I was saying to myself I needed before taking a plunge, and I've also got the opportunity.
Yeah.
And basically, it was like, my buffer is going to last for, several months. that's how much time I have to make this work. And
Yeah.
if I don't, I'll need to get another job and keep doing it part-time and try again later. But I was lucky that it worked out and that I worked hard enough and got the right jobs. And I mean, I
Absolutely.
already, because I'd been doing it part-time for several years anyway, I already had contracts. I already had regular clients. I already had the opportunity and the ability there. It just suddenly meant that I could do much more of it.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you think, in hindsight, you would have ultimately taken the plunge anyway?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it was something
it was
I was
you were
working
yeah.
towards, but I mean, at the time, I was in a very stable 9 to 5 job that
It's hard to give that
was,
up.
yeah, and I was treated really, really well there.
Hmm.
It was a great job to be in, and it was like I could have stayed in that job for a very long time. And I was also at the time thinking, right, well, I can stay in this job and keep a regular income whilst doing the voice acting on the side, and I can look at getting something like a mortgage or a house or whatever,
Yeah.
and then take that plunge. And it just didn't work out in that way. Thankfully, voice acting worked enough that I now have a mortgage. I
Yeah,
now have a place.
fantastic. Yeah, yeah.
And I was very lucky in that way. Or arguably, it wasn't lucky. It was that I worked hard enough
Well,
to
it's
get it
yes.
done.
The work must have been pretty intense to kind of get to that place. And like you said, you built those contacts by then. So
Mm.
you had something to start from. Yeah, sorry, I don't want to make it sound like it's all luck. Obviously, it's not luck.
No, no, no.
It's
It was me saying it.
um, but yeah, that's incredible. And do you have like? I'm really curious because obviously you have an acting background, which I didn't realize that you kind of started from an acting background. So did like accents and different tones in your voice, did that come naturally to you, or is that something you've had to really work at?
uh, kind of, yes. But not through a normal means, I suppose. I suppose part of it is I fell in love with my voice at a young age because when I was very, very small, I had problems with my ear canals, and I had sort of what's called glue ear
Right.
multiple times, and I had to have surgery to have grommets fitted in the ear, which are like little tubes to change how the ear works. So I had surgery on
Right.
the ears at a very, very young age. So very young, I couldn't hear properly for quite a while. I was about 80% deaf in one ear due to repeated infections and glue ears and things. And after that kind of got cleared up due to the things like the grommets and surgical intervention. My parents tell me I suddenly realized I had a voice and then wouldn't shut up. So,
Right. So it's like you were devoid of it for so long that once you finally had it, you were like, right, that's yeah.
pretty much. So they would catch me talking to myself, singing to myself, and kind of doing whatever from a very, very young age. In addition to that, before I even turned 1 years old, we moved to Australia. I was born in England, but we
Mm.
moved to Australia and lived there for several years. And I developed a very thick Australian accent as my first accent.
Right.
We then came back to the UK, to England, and I uh, gradually, over about 4 or 5 years, built an English accent back and had my natural English accent.
Right.
Then we moved as a family to America, and I developed an American accent because we were there for about 3 or 4 years as well. And then I came back to England. So through all these like formative years, I was used to changing my accent from place to place to place.
Interesting.
Um, and it meant then that whenever I spoke to someone from Australia, my Australian accent started coming back. Whenever I spoke to someone from America, my American accent started coming back, and then it was like, well, hang on, and it happens when I get drunk as well. But then I realized, well, hang on a second, I can do this when I want to do this. And it gave me a good ear for accents and a good foundation for accents. I had friends who were Scottish, so I started to mimic them just out of fun and, just messing around with friends, really. And the same with American accents and things. And it was just something that I always did, was silly voices and accents and just messing around with friends down the pub and, telling stories and things like that. And it was just something that I enjoyed doing. I didn't even really think about it. It was just something I did.
It's kind of funny that yeah. I guess that probably in a way led into your voice roles anyway. But it's kind of
Mm.
interesting that you were almost learning how to do your job before you even knew you wanted to do your job. You were kind of halfway there already, right?
Before I even realized it was a job, that was
Yeah.
the thing. Like I said, if I'd known about it when I was younger, I would have gotten involved in it much sooner. It would have been such a, oh, that's a really cool thing. I want to do that. But yeah, so when I started looking into doing acting and then voice acting as well, I started looking into it more and doing research about well, how do actors have different voices? You know,
Mm.
how do you develop an accent, and then how do you switch from one accent to another? And it's things like having lead phrases where you have a phrase that you say in a specific accent, and when you're initially starting to learn an accent, you say that phrase out loud, and that
Okay.
helps you switch from one accent to the other mentally. And eventually, after you've done it enough times, you can just sort of say it in your head, and then you start speaking in another accent. So you can have someone speaking in an English accent, and then in
That's
their head they can have that lead phrase, and it can lead into the other accent. And then in theory, you go on from there to the point where you just know how to switch from one to the other. So it's a
yeah.
gradual process of learning, kind of like learning to switch into another character or
Yeah.
something like that.
That's really interesting because I'm not an accent person. I've never been able to do that kind of thing. So it kind of fascinates me when people are able to do it. And it's interesting that now you just hear it in your head. You can just say those phrases that kind of get you into that frame of mind in your head and switch that switch. It's really interesting. Have you had any favorite roles over the years? Because you've done a lot of video game work and whatnot. Do you have a preference for the type of work you do? I mean, it's quite broad. Voice acting.
Well, I love video games,
Yeah,
and animation comes in with that as well, kind of character roles.
yeah,
That's certainly where the passion is, because it's the greatest opportunity for storytelling,
I
and that's
agree.
the big thing. It's like giving people, one part of the puzzle to immersing them into a world or a story or a scenario, and um, that's kind of the joy for me. And again, it was like screen acting is fun, and I still do acting in front of the camera, and I
Yeah.
still enjoy it, but it's limiting.
Mm.
When as a screen actor, I'm very limited by how I look. Whereas as a voice actor, I can play a 7 foot tall minotaur or a 2 foot tall gnome, and everything in between.
Mm.
I can be the leading man or the villain or the love interest or whatever kind of I can turn my voice to, which is
Yeah,
far
you're
more
you're
varied.
you're only limited by your range as a voice actor, which I
Mm.
guess is potentially endless. That's interesting. I'd never really thought about it like that. That's really interesting.
So it's a much bigger sandbox to play in. It's just a much bigger world to find roles and explore different worlds, and things like doing on-screen science fiction has to come with
Mm.
everything that comes with, in terms of effects and sets and so on and so forth. But video games, you're already building something that is visual, whether it's real life or science fiction or whatever. So
Yeah.
uh, that that's a given. That's just part of the process. So um, it's easier to find more varied roles within that, rather than there being a few science fiction films, but mainly real life films, because that's much easier to film. So that again, it takes away those limitations jobs wise as well.
Mm.
Um, Part of the reason I love the job is that it is so varied, and that I do get to play different things. I really like recently I did a game called Spectacular Sparky, where
I
I
think I saw
play.
you posting about that on Instagram not so long ago. Actually, yeah.
So it's been released on Steam and on Switch, Nintendo Switch as
Hmm.
well, and it's gone down really, really well. And it's sort of a love letter to games like Contra and Sonic the
Wonderful.
Hedgehog. And it's a side-scrolling sort of character shoot 'em up platformer,
Is
and
it full
it's
of '90s attitude?
completely, yeah, yeah. The
Excellent,
lead
excellent.
the lead character Sparky is a space bunny who is also a bounty hunter, and
Sounds like Jazz Jackrabbit a little.
a little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
There's been those comparisons made, and certainly in that kind of way, and it's in that vein.
Hmm.
And I play the sort of mission giver, if you like. So between every world that he goes to, or bounty that he's going to be collecting, my character gives him this is who you're after, this is for the bounty, and this is some backstory about what they're like,
Yeah.
and the banter between the characters, and he's a shark pig. uh so think is it Bebop or Rocksteady, who's the warthog
You
in
know,
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle? I
Always
can't
get
remember which one
confused
it is.
between the
I
two
think it's
myself.
Bebop.
Yeah,
I
I
think
think
it's
you're right.
Bebop.
Yeah, I think
And
Rocksteady's the Rhino, right? I think you're right.
think so. So I think it's so imagine Bebop crossed with a shark, and
Amazing.
then you're in a rough ballpark. So he's an ex-military man who was then in a biker gang and is now leading a mercenary guild and is giving Sparky his mission. And he talks like this: "Hey there, little Sparky boy," and it's this great sort of slight Southern American gravelly voice of this big muscly shark pig in space.
Sounds
It's
great.
ridiculous, but it was such a fun role. And uh going rather than recording it here, I did some of
Mm.
the lines here and some of them in a local studio, where the director, who's also the lead developer for the game, was there on site, and we had the script, and the scripts were fantastic.
Yeah.
But we also were given a lot of license to ad lib and have fun with it, and a lot of the other actors were there as well. So it was a real collaborative, fun atmosphere.
Mm.
So I love it for the role, but I also love it for the actual recording experience. Was really joyful and really fun, and just we had a blast doing it. So that's certainly a favorite.
Yeah.
I also did one recently called I think it's called Medieval Dominion. I'd need to double check that.
Oh, right.
But it's like an RTS.
Oh, cool.
So in the vein of the original Warhammer game, that
Oh,
kind of thing.
great. Yeah,
So
yeah.
lots of selecting your troops and telling them where to
Mhm.
go. But that one was fun because I was voicing so many characters. So it's, skeletons and wraiths and
Mm.
goblins and things like that. And it was really fun because they did things like, rather than the skeletons just making bone noises or
Yeah.
voiceless characters to a degree, instead they were properly like and really like these excited skeletons in the vein of like Army of Darkness, the
Brilliant.
Evil Dead 3
Yeah.
and things like that. So really manic sort of wild stuff. And but yeah, we got to do wraiths and goblins and ogres and stuff, and it was just really, it was a day of playing
Just got
because
to
there's no
go
like,
crazy and yeah.
yeah, because it's not like lines of dialogue. Instead, it was, it's when you click on a unit and then sort of like, and then you tell them where to go. It's like, and, it's just
Yeah.
these kind of like verbalizations, I suppose, rather than lines of dialogue, as it were.
Mm.
And lots of roaring and growling and snarling and stuff. And so it's just a fun day in a studio of making stupid noises. It's like, it makes you feel like a kid again. It just makes you feel like you're
Yeah.
playing, but you're getting paid to play in a
Mhm.
glorious way. So that's been really fun. I really enjoyed doing that. That was a fantastic day in the studio.
That does sound like a lot of fun, I must admit.
Yeah, it is. It's Medieval Dominion.
Medieval Dominion.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
that sounds like a lot of fun.
it's in the process of being developed at the moment. So it's
Oh.
yeah, it's really cool. What else? Oh, sorry.
Oh, no. Continue, please.
I was going to say I've also enjoyed. There's a team working on a remake of Dark Forces,
I
which
know.
is a Star Wars game.
I was looking forward to
love.
talking to you about this actually, because one of my favorite games of all time. I can see you got it in the background there. The original Dark
I do.
Forces. Kyle
Yeah.
Katarn, the original badass who stole the Death Star plans in like a minute. I don't know
which
why
is
it
now,
took them
like-
half of Rogue One to do it, because he did it in 5 minutes.
Well, if you read the comic books, there's way more backstory to the.
I actually have the
to
audiobooks.
infiltration, so.
Mm.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, I've got the audiobooks
but yeah,
of that.
There's like a nearby town
Mhm.
that's being bombed, I think, to distract the main
Yeah.
stormtrooper regiment from what's happening in this place where he's infiltrating and stuff. And yeah, there's some really cool stuff going on there, which the developers are trying to sort of integrate into this
It's
remake reboot that they're doing in the Unreal Engine.
It looks so good. And you do all the voices, right? You've done like every character so far, I think.
Not all of them, a lot of them.
Right.
Yeah, there are female roles like Mon Mothma
Jan,
and Jan Ors. Yeah, so obviously I'm not putting on a lady voice for that. My lady voices tend to be just the Queen, and that's it.
Right. Yeah.
yes, one would like to say hello, that kind of thing. But no, I can't do a convincing female voice, sadly.
Hmm.
But yes, so I've been doing things like Rom Mock, who's like an Imperial commander, and
Yeah.
Kyle Katarn, and then the stormtroopers and Imperial officers and stuff. And that's been again great fun finding these
Mm.
classic lines from a game I used to play when I was a teenager.
That's
And
the thing. I mean, it's a game that you have a massive passion for as well, and then someone approaches you, or did you approach them to just say like, "Guys, I want in on this"?
I approached them.
Mm.
I mean, I was a fan anyway because I loved the game as a kid, and I was just like, oh wow, the idea of being able to play through this is amazing. But then as a video game voice actor, I contacted them and I was like, do you have voices for this? I'd love to do this, and actually sent them some audio really quickly,
Yeah,
just going,
I
this
could
is me
do
doing
this.
this.
Yeah,
This is me showing you I can do this. And they were just like, that's perfect. We need someone to do that. You're on,
amazing.
you're in, you're it, you're the guy. And I was like, okay. And then they found out I could do more, and they were like, well, yeah, do you want to do loads of it? And I was like,
Because I think
I mean,
all of
yeah,
their footage that they put on so far has had your voice in every single video.
a lot of it.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of the early stuff was sort of stock audio of,
Okay.
people being stuff, but it was, they're sort of building this, and
Mm.
a lot of the reason I want to get involved is this Shadow Art Games, I should say. That's the company doing this, and their speed at which they can build models of items in game and things. Not only have they been building all this, they've now started to build VR capability into Dark Forces.
Amazing.
So not only are you going to be able to play Dark Forces in a next gen kind of visual upgrade,
Mm.
but you could also do it in VR using an Oculus Rift or whatever, and
Incredible.
um, being in the game. So I've seen they've in the Discord they share a lot of stuff that they don't put out publicly, and it's
Sure.
all the little video clips of them picking up Imperials uh, and throwing them around the maps, and sort of dropping things on them from a height and killing them from fall damage.
Brilliant.
And they've said that it's probably going to be allowed, and I haven't seen it yet. The idea of picking up a mouse droid and knocking out an Imperial trooper with a mouse droid, just that brings me joy.
Oh, that's fantastic. It looks like such a lovely passion project because like I know Dark like you. I think we must be like a similar age because you seem to have a lot of the same taste in games that I did. Those kind of early to mid 90s DOS/Windows 95 games, and Dark Forces like that was the first PC game I bought with my own money.
Ah,
And I have such a soft spot for it. But watching these guys' video, the video they're putting out, it's obviously they've done their own thing and they've added areas and they're not just going to make a straight remake. But you can tell they have such attention to detail and passion for this project. It's amazing.
they've been trawling through like footage from the films and the new films as well as the old films to kind of get a balance between it. And they've really gone into things like going into some of the more recent games like Jedi Fallen Order and looking at how they've put all that together and going, great, we can use this kind of
Hmm.
thing as inspiration here. This is inspiration here. Rather than just doing, because obviously those early first-person shooters like Wolfenstein, Doom, and Dark Forces, obviously derivative from that,
Yeah.
they were really limited in terms of what they could do in terms of disk space and
Yeah.
what the programs could do. So you've got a lot of things like textures on walls that are repeated
Yeah.
so often. So a lot of the places look the same. They don't have that limitation, and
No.
so why would they limit themselves in that way? So
Absolutely.
um, they've been doing some live streams on the Discord as well, where they are actually building the levels and sharing the screen so people can see how it's done. And it's been amazing seeing how they've been painstakingly doing things like all the wall lights where you have those slats in the
Yeah.
wall, the lights,
Incredible.
and they're like putting them in individually so that you've got different lights playing off reflections in the rest of the room as you've got
Mm.
light sources there. And it's like in the original, this room would have been blank, but we don't just want to have a blank room. It looks
Yeah.
weird. It does look like
It
rooms
is
have to serve a purpose in real life. So they're putting
absolutely.
things like pipes coming down from the ceiling into the walls, and like holograms being projected here and video
Oh,
screens
incredible.
here, and it's like, well, now this looks like a livable space, like there's a purpose for this room to be here, and it's being used for something, whether it's storage or data entry or whatever, and it's just, yeah, it's bringing it to life, which I really love.
I'm really excited for it. I'm looking forward to playing it. At the moment, I always play there's like a mod called Dark XL for Dark Forces, which kind of upgrades it to work a little better with modern systems and whatnot, and kind of has like a few lighting upgrades to the visuals, but it's pretty much stock. But I must admit, I always find myself skipping level 3, which I goddamn hate. So I'm hoping they fix the sewer level. If they can fix that, I will eternally be grateful.
Well, I think a lot of the sewer level, again,
it's repeating.
Yeah, it's repeated textures and walls, and it's so easy to get lost in that level.
Oh, it's awful. I hate it.
I mean, sewer levels typically in games tend to get bashed on because they tend to be a frustration, but especially I just remember the Dianogas over and over again.
And it's a puzzle level as well. It's not just a sewer level. It's like a puzzle that you have to figure out. So I remember as a kid spending like forever in that thing. So frustrating. But that looks like such a great...
Even once you get past the labyrinth, there's like those interlocking circular bits that you have to... Oh, just, man.
Such a pain. But you got to play Kyle Katarn. That's amazing. Yeah. That must be a dream come true.
We were talking about the different versions of Kyle Katarn, and there's the guy, I think it's Jason Court.
Yeah, he makes wine now. He was an actor and then just decided to make wine.
I've had a conversation with him about it.
Oh, really?
And yeah, we were going to set up an interview, but we couldn't find a convenient time, and I felt like I was...
In fact, I think
bugging him, so I left it alone for now. But yeah, he was a really nice guy. He responded to my emails, and we were just emailing back and forth for a while about what he did. But yeah, he kind of did that and a couple other little things, and he went, nah, I don't want to be an actor, and just went off.
Fair enough,
had a vineyard and apparently makes very nice wine. But so does Sam Neill, the actor. He runs two paddocks. Yeah, two paddocks is his vineyard, and I've had some of his wine. It was very nice.
Oh.
But I suppose Dan Aykroyd makes vodka, so whatever.
Apparently Dan Aykroyd's vodka is very good. I've never actually tried it, but I hear good things. But yeah. So I'm curious. Like, obviously, I mean, doing like any voice role is probably going to be quite taxing, some more than others, but certainly when you're doing like audio books and there's a lot. I mean, I think you did like Alice in Wonderland, haven't you, and things like that. I mean, that's quite a lot of speaking and talking to do. I'm curious, like, what your kind of regimen is in terms of voice care and kind of managing that day to day, or whether you just kind of build up a tolerance to it. I don't know.
Well, with audiobooks, when I'm producing them myself, I tend to kind of pan things out a little bit and take time with it. So you kind of do a chapter a day, and then when you need to give your voice a rest, I'll do the editing of the what I've recorded up to that point, and just say, well, I've got a voice rest day, so it'll be an editing day, and I'll just put on some soft music in the background and let it go.
Yeah.
And that's kind of becomes that fun process. But yeah, I mean, it's things like hydration is a huge element to being a voice actor.
Sure.
Almost anyone who asks me about it, I'm like, drink every day.
Yeah.
And it's not just drinking before you've got to talk, because that only does so much. It's got to be days beforehand where your body is keeping hydrated, because that's what creates all those clicks and pops and smacking lip sounds and stuff when you're doing, especially on audiobooks where your mouth can get dry, is part of that. It's things like not having too much stuff like dairy, cheese, and milk, which can all create that claggy kind of thing in there. Not too much alcohol and coffee, which is a diuretic and can dry you out and dehydrate you in that way. And obviously alcohol can dehydrate you and dry out your mouth as well. So, and believe me, doing an audiobook hungover is probably the worst experience ever.
I can imagine, especially if it's quite a happy role or something like that. I guess if you're playing like a miserable person or a villain or something, you might be able to get away with it. But
yeah, be upbeat and loud and really enthusiastic when you're feeling not that. Yeah. But when you get called into a studio to do an audiobook, it's a much more intensive day. So you've got to be much more careful with your voice, and having a steady read where you're not screaming and shouting and you're not whispering, because whispering, you wouldn't think it, but whispering can tire out your voice.
Right.
And actually talking normally is much more healthy for your voice than whispering,
Hmm.
because it creates that grating. But yeah, it's just things like hydrating, things like there's a product called Vocal Zone,
Okay.
which is used by singers a lot to help with voice recovery. That's quite useful, which is things like that. It's sort of peppermint and myrrh and a whole bunch of stuff, which is just good for the throat. Good old honey and whiskey can sometimes be helpful in an emergency.
In a pinch.
Mm. But a lot of those things really are no substitute just for treating your voice with care, knowing your range,
Hmm.
being able to work within your range. A lot of people, when they first start out voice acting, they listen to their own voice and go, "Oh, it sounds weird. Oh, it sounds strange."
Yeah.
When it's just your brain needs to get used to what your voice sounds, not within the cavity of your own skull and vibration, but actually coming out from a single source. Because when you talk, obviously, it bounces across the
Projects
walls
and.
in the room, and you're hearing it within your own head.
Hmm.
Because when you cover your mouth and hum, you can still hear it crystal
Yeah.
clear because it's all vibrations in there. So a lot of what I tell people to do is just record something, anything,
Yeah.
every day and listen to it. And your brain eventually equates what you're hearing from the speaker and what you're hearing inside your own head. They become the same thing. And that
Yes.
gives you greater control over your own voice. And once you've gotten that control of your own voice, you can be much healthier with how you use it.
Yeah.
And I also tell people to take singing lessons because, again, that can
Just
teach you how to
control.
control your own voice and the folds of your voice box, and just making sure that you're being healthy about it. So, yeah, part of
Hmm.
it's technique, part of it's preparation, and then part of it's recovery, and having a balance of all those things, and sometimes just taking a day off,
Yeah.
just having a quiet day vocally
Hmm.
is very useful.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's funny you should say that. I always remember when I first started in radio, I was always like, oh, I just wish I could. I wish I could do the show without wearing headphones because just the sound of my own voice to begin with was just like, oh, I can't stand it. But you're right. You just get used to it to where you hear almost you hear your true voice now when you just speak, even if you can't hear it through headphones. You just hear
Yeah.
your voice as it comes out. Your brain kind of adjusts.
Another trick is open backed headphones.
Yeah.
So these headphones, I can actually hear through them.
Mm-hmm.
They're not closed cups, so I can hear my own voice perfectly well. And then when I'm doing editing, I've got closed
Yeah.
back headphones where I can shut off the world, and it's just what I'm listening to.
Mm-hmm.
So you can use techniques like that. And actually, a lot of the recording I do it without headphones because I know the levels, I know the environment I'm recording in as a producer. I know that all of that is fine, and I know what tone I need to have when doing the audiobooks. So I don't need to wear headphones to monitor
Yeah.
because I know what's happening in this scenario. Obviously, in somebody else's studios, then I need to monitor what I'm doing to make sure I'm not peaking the audio or being so quiet it's not registering. So
Yeah. So I was interested. You said that you were obviously into music, and you were a singer and all of that kind of stuff as well. And I knew you did Upshot. You currently do Upshot. Your band, your rhythm guitar, and I guess backing vocals in that band. Is that right?
rhythm guitar and lead vocals
Oh, and
in that
lead
band, yeah.
vocals. Wow. I didn't realize until I went on your website how many other bands and things you've been involved in musically.
So yeah, when I was a kid, I played in bands, and I was a singer first, and then I started to learn bass initially, and then guitar to support myself as a singer. So I was in lots of little bands when I was a kid, and then I was a solo acoustic singer-songwriter for quite a long time, where I was just writing stuff and finding my feet, finding my voice, finding my
Mhm.
style. And I sort of messed around with a couple of little bands that didn't really go anywhere. I was in a band at university and we had fun there. And then I ended up going, right, well, I want to form a band to play my songs. And
Mhm.
I formed a band called Welcome Back Delta. And the guys who joined the band were also talented musicians themselves. And so rather than just playing my stuff, we ended up writing together as a unit that I couldn't call my own.
Yeah.
So it became a democracy rather than a dictatorship, as it were. And it became our band rather than my band. And Welcome Back Delta, we played a lot of amazing gigs with, and we released a couple of albums worldwide and did some tours of the
Hmm.
UK, and we played with bands like Clutch and Airborne and
Awesome.
Hawkwind and all kinds of stuff, and played in some major festivals like Grillstock and Amplified and Hard Rock Hell and Giants of Rock and stuff like that. And yeah, had a great sort of career in that. And then we came to an end where we're all sort of pulling in different directions and wanting different things. And so that came to an end. And, you know, we played out some of our biggest shows and a sold out hometown gig, which is always a good feeling.
Awesome.
And just said, you know, rather than it fading out or it
Just go
coming
out
to
with
an
a
end,
bang,
because
and yeah.
yeah, we went out with a bang rather than a whisper, which made more sense. And you know, we could always come back to it if we ever wanted to. But I formed Upshot after that, and
Hmm.
um, now we're recording our first album with Upshot, and that's going really well. What I also do is, because I write a lot in other styles as well,
Yeah.
I also write music for other people as well.
Oh,
So
interesting.
I get paid to write music, and sometimes it's just lyrics, sometimes it's music, it's vocal melodies, and sometimes it's the actual chords and things as well. So yeah, I've kind of got a discography where I've written for other bands where I'm not performing it, but I've just been a co-writer and been named on a few albums doing that as well, which has been an amazing experience, because sometimes it's people like, oh, it's my boyfriend's birthday and I want to write a
Yeah.
song for him, and can you help me out? It's like, yeah, sure. And other times it's, you know, rock bands, funk bands, blues
Mm.
bands, and it means I get to kind of flex my musical muscles, as it were, in a whole bunch of different genres. And again, it's something that's never boring. And yeah, I count it kind of as a hobby I get paid to do, which is a
Yeah,
lovely way
it's a
to,
good hobby.
yeah. So I've ended up with a bit of a discography, as it were.
Yeah, I was surprised at how extensive it was. You know, you go to your website and it was just scrolling and scrolling. I was like, wow, there's like way more here than I thought. Because I kind of assumed that you were like a voice actor, and then you'd recently decided, hey, I'm gonna, you know, start a band and started Upshot. And I had no idea that you had like this extensive discography behind you. So yeah, it was quite a
Yeah,
nice
I was
surprise.
certainly a singer first, singer guitarist then as
Mm.
well, before a voice actor. It's just that music doesn't pay very much
Mm.
these days. You know, gone are
Yeah.
the days of the £1 million record deal and things like that. And you know, the record deals that do happen, in the majority case, it's pop. You know, it's DJs, or it's singers or singer songwriters,
Mm.
and things get sort of manufactured on top of that. The touring, gigging bands, even sort of fairly big ones, a lot of them still have day jobs because it
Yeah.
just doesn't pay very much. But I could never stop doing it. I love being in a band. I love playing. I love performing and writing, and it's very close to my heart. I kind of feel like music's been there for me at difficult points in my life, and
Sure.
so my aim is to create music that hopefully will be there for some people
Mm.
in difficult or wonderful parts of their lives as well. So
And when it's live in front of an audience and it's going well, there is no better feeling. Really, it's amazing.
it's yeah, playing live is an incredible experience, and I've been very, very lucky to play to some very big crowds and have some amazing gigs, and then also play to some really tiny crowds and have some intimate gigs as well,
Hmm.
which have, yeah, different experiences, but both equally as enjoyable. So
Yeah, yeah. And I guess, like, did you? Well, I guess you started it in film making at a very young age as well. You were kind of relating a lot of the memories I have of that kind of. Kids just don't realize how easy they've got it with video editing these days. It's so much easier. Um, so, but obviously you did quite a few music videos, and you've done some short films as well, which you've
yeah,
produced and edited and filmed.
yeah. So in part of getting involved in film, like I said, I started behind the camera,
Mm.
so I'd sort of acquired a lot of knowledge there, and I sort of ended up with, because I had friends who did a lot of film stuff, and they started doing things, and I was like, and just got swept along with them and enjoyed working with them, and then also found I'd acquired the knowledge
Yeah.
whilst working with them and, switching so many hats between, oh, we need somebody behind the camera and then we need somebody doing this and we need somebody doing this. And I was always happy to go, well, yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
you end up building the knowledge and then sort of, you come up with some ideas and start your own film sets and you start doing more of it yourself. And so, yeah, I've done a lot of short films, where I started doing things like being behind the camera and then doing the editing.
yeah.
And that's a large part of it, is choosing those shots and creating that narrative and directing people. Uh, and so I was starting to do that already, and then I just started doing it myself. And then music videos kind of came across as a necessity, being in a band myself.
Sure,
It's
you're like, yeah, we need a music video. I could do that.
yeah,
Yeah.
we need a music video. It's like, well, I know how to use a camera and I know how to set up a shot well and
Mm,
and edit it all together. So
mm.
why am I paying somebody else to do it? And it's sometimes you pay somebody else to do it because it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work, but it's a
And
lot of fun. I enjoy
yeah,
music videos.
I love doing it, and a lot of the music videos I've done have been very lo-fi in a lot of ways, which
Hmm.
is a lot more fun. And
Yeah.
it's I've done a few punk bands like TIE Fighter Pilot and Lesser Known Character. I did one of their videos as well, and it was just really good fun. We just came up with a concept together, and something that was easy to film, fun to film, something that I was capable of with the equipment that I had, and
Hmm.
then yeah, we just went, shot it, edit it, print, away we go.
Yeah.
And yeah, I really I think they still stand up, and we had a lot of fun doing it. And
Mm.
some of them being punk bands, they're very politically charged as well, which I enjoyed from a personal standpoint as well.
Well, that
So
always helps for sure if you're, if it's something you're actually into as well. Yeah, I really love your short. Is it the Deacon Suite?
yeah,
That, I think you showed me that when we were filming, or you mentioned it to me when we were filming Cold Shot, and I checked that. That's a fantastic short. I really enjoyed that one.
yeah, great little horror
Mm.
concept. I had done previous film work with Steve Meller from Burnt Papyrus. Burnt Papyrus was set up with me and him, and we'd already done like a sort of
Mm.
horror fantasy TV pilot, which we couldn't get uh, to any studios to pick up to go anywhere, but we enjoyed the pilot and filming that. We knew we had a good working relationship, and so yeah, we came up with this concept of the Deacon Suite, of this nameless horror in this
Yeah.
haunted hotel room. And there was a really lovely hotel in Cheltenham that was ancient, because we have a lot of that stuff around here. And Prestbury in Cheltenham is I think it's like the second most haunted village in England.
Is it really? I
Um,
didn't know that.
yes, we've got a lot of local ghost stories and ghost tours and things, which is good fun.
Mm.
But yeah, we knew this hotel room looked amazing because it's got the four-poster bed with all the, velvet curtains. It's got
It's a fantastic. Well, I guess it's not a set, but it made for a fantastic set.
yeah, well, that was one of the things that was scary about filming there, because this room was expensive.
Right.
We were very lucky that the owner was a fan of film and a fan of horror film, and he was like, "Yeah, like, I've got nobody booked in on these days. Go ahead,
Amazing.
you can, yeah, as long as we don't get a booking, you can film in there." We were like, "Fantastic!" And it's got like a gramophone in it and things like that. It's just like, this is bonkers. And then the bathroom is really strange because it's very modern, and it's got the
Right.
waterfall tap and things. But yeah, we set up to film in this place, and we come up with the concept and gotten everything ready, and I was producing it, so it's like getting all the props, the costumes, and me and Steve cast it together. And I'm still in touch with the lead actress, Georgie. She was absolutely incredible, and such a lovely person to work with. And I've just actually been working with her again recently on another project, which is fun. Um, and yeah, we just put all this together. We got we hired in a director of photography, just to take that job out of our hands, because we were already doing so much, because I was doing a lot of the production element of it, and me and Steve were both doing the lighting. Steve was doing the direction. He'd done a lot of the dialogue elements for the script,
Hmm.
where I'd sort of come up with the overarching story, and he actually put it into, as a writer, put it into a script as well. And yeah, so we had enough on our plate to not not want to worry about directing the photography element of it. But yeah, the challenges on script were immense because we had this concept of Georgie's character walking around set, being on the phone, being distracted, and not noticing the drips of blood from
Yeah.
the ceiling that were sort of like following her footsteps as she walks around the place, dropping on the clothes she'd laid out to wear for work in the morning, dropping in the cup of tea she'd just prepared and been distracted and not looking at, and she just stirs it without looking at it and drinks the blood in the tea, and going into the shower and it dripping on her back and her just washing it off without noticing it, and
Mm.
then lying on the bed still in her towel and then it dripping on her face, and that's the reveal.
Yeah.
And that was just really, really good fun. But obviously we've got this caro syrup, corn syrup, blood, and you can't drop that on a £2,000 sofa.
I would be terrified. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't. You can't. Literally, we can't. We've got this horrible viscous staining liquid, and it's like we need to drip it everywhere and not actually have it hit anywhere. That's
Yeah.
going to cost us thousands of pounds because we don't have
No.
thousands of pounds. This is such a small budget.
And this hotel owner is doing you a massive solid by letting you film there in the first place. You don't want to upset them. Yeah.
So we were doing things like a
Figure something out.
waterfall sink where the tap comes into the sink is like it's like an open channel,
Mhm.
and we were just like, oh, brilliant! We weren't expecting to have something like this, and it meant that we could drip blood into this channel in this waterfall sink
Oh, that's awesome.
for the tap to make it look like the tap starts running with blood as the water comes out, and it was just like, oh, this is just you can plan as much as you want for a shoot like this. But then when you get there, you suddenly realize that actually this shot doesn't work. We need to shoot it from over here instead.
Mm.
Um,
Or
this
there's
ac-
this opportunity that's just presented itself.
exactly. So that kind of stuff was a great experience, and that short film, quality wise, turned out really, really well. We were really pleased with it, and
Really is incredible, and the set certainly helps, but the production quality in general is fantastic. It's really, really good.
we even had fun. I don't know how many people notice it, but the credits, as the credits roll, the credits start to go on a Dutch angle ever so slightly. They just gradually turn as
Do
the
you know,
credits roll.
I hadn't noticed that. I'm gonna have to
It's a
rewatch
really
it to
fun
notice that.
little touch that we had on that, which is good fun because I mean the amount of times we go, oh yeah, let's do another Dutch angle. It's just...
No, it's a fantastic. It's a fantastic video. It's still on YouTube, isn't it? I think it's Burnt Papyrus. Is it? Yeah.
Yeah. That was the production company that we
Mhm.
set up and had fun with, and now Steve doesn't do as much film work, but instead he streams. He does
Oh,
like
okay.
various games and Minecraft and stuff like that, and streams, and he belongs to like a collective of streamers on Twitch and stuff. So he does that, and I've gone off doing music videos and messing
Awesome.
around with that.
Yeah. No, it's really, really cool. So I guess all of that kind of brings me on to Aniline City, which is your audio series, or starting as an audio series. And I'm really curious where you came up with the concept for Aniline City, and where did this whole idea come from?
So I mean, I'd always been trying to write stuff in fiction
Yeah.
when I was younger, obviously working in film and stuff, and trying to like find the jobs that I enjoy and having fun with it. And like I say, coming up with concepts for
Mm.
horror shorts and things like that. And I enjoy the process of coming up with ideas for story more than the nitty gritty of script writing. It's not
Yeah.
something that comes naturally to me. It's something I'm still working on. But I'd come up with this outline for a story about a serial killer in an American city, and I've always been a fan of noir,
Yeah.
both classic noir and neo noir storytelling. Anyway, things. I'm neo noir being stuff like Sin City, and
Yeah.
classic noir being things like Humphrey Bogart and Sam Spade and stuff like
Mhm.
that, which is where a lot of that comes from. So I came up with a story. Must be definitely over 10 years ago.
Oh, wow, really? That long
I didn't
ago?
realize. Yeah, I didn't realize how long it had been until my partner Sarah, she was saying, "No, you've been talking about this since we've been together." And I was like, "Oh, it
Wow.
really was that long ago," and a lot of it came from playing a game called Condemned: Criminal
Yes, great game.
Origins.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I loved the atmosphere and feel of that game, and also games like Max Payne,
Hmm.
which again is a neo noir kind of
Very.
setting.
Yeah.
You've got that internal monologue being spoken out loud in the game for the listener or
Yeah.
player. Um, and so I took a lot of license from that with the original story that I'd start to put together about this serial killer that leaves playing cards at the scene of the crime to number their kills as they're working their way towards their king or their ace, if you like, their
Yeah.
final kill. Um, which again, I watch a lot of stuff like Criminal Minds and CSI and all those
Hmm.
kind of like cheesy programs, but they do kind of give you some insight as to how serial killers tend to have like either an ideal kill or an ideal victim in mind and as they get closer they tend to devolve and
Mm.
things get out of hand as it goes to it. So I'd written all of that into the story and all of those sort of little tidbits of real life knowledge that they've put into this fiction. It meant that I could also take those real life lessons and put them into my fiction as well.
Yeah.
um, and yeah, it just sort of grew. It was things like, okay, I want to do this, but I can't set it in an existing city,
Hmm.
because that again that puts that puts a fence around your storytelling. It has to be accurate to the city. But then I also thought if you set it in a real city and you have those sort of fences which you're within,
Mm.
also the chances of somebody going, "Hey, that's my city. How dare you?"
It's not that
You
bad.
know,
What are you
it's
talking about? Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, like so setting in a fictional city was important, and a lot of the neo noir influences are things like Chicago, Detroit, New York. So
Yeah.
I wanted to kind of put all of those together into something and uh, come up with a city around that kind of area. And I was looking near Devil's Lake, um, and I was looking for things to call the city, and
Mm.
this sort of middle city, or capital city, and a lot of these sort of stereotypical nondescript American city names have been used in fiction before.
Sure. Yeah.
So I was looking for something else, and I came across the idea of the uniforms that would have been used in the Civil War, so of the Confederacy and the Union. Uh, Uniforms themselves would have been tanned leather and dyed cloth.
Hmm.
And in tanning and dyeing, aniline as a chemical would have been used a lot in that kind of process. So I had this idea then, this concept of an American city that used to be filled with tanning and
Sure.
dyeing places, and that's how the industry grew in that area and became a small town that grew into a large town that grew into a
Hmm.
city. And then aniline has also been used in medical use as well back in the day, not so much these days. So I had this idea of, well, what if the medical pharmaceutical companies caught wind of that now? And so aniline being used for medical use, and this is where fiction takes over, as they found a new use for aniline chemicals, and
Hmm.
so aniline derivative pharmaceuticals, and big pharma is big in America anyway. So,
Yeah.
and that then creates this rich poor divide of these poor people who were originally tanning and dyeing factories, which was a really smelly, dirty business in industrial business, and then these big pharmaceutical companies creating this, well, what are they doing here? And you've got this, all the new builds in the city are being built for these
For
corporate,
the yeah.
high earners, and all of these,
Mm.
families who have been here for generations are all in poverty and destitute, can't get this new housing, and that unfair rich poor divide then creates a breeding ground for desperation and crime. So it's that kind of perfect boiling pot. So Aniline City became the name of the city where I could set this story, and it meant that it had a history, kind of like if you've ever seen Kingdom Hospital,
Yeah.
um, which was an old black and white thing that got remade as with Stephen King, as this beautiful sort of slightly horror, slightly supernatural thriller series set in
Hmm.
a very strange hospital on unsettled ground. And the hospital was built on the grounds of an old tanning and dyeing
Right. Yeah.
facility, so I could take some influence from there as well, and that helped with that sort of scenario. So yeah, I just started writing this, and as I started writing this, I don't have the writing chops to put this together fully. Certainly, my writing's come a long way, but I'm not confident enough to go, yeah, I can write a 6-part series. That's fine.
Mm.
So I ended up hiring on writers who I'd worked with previously, and
Yeah.
obviously I'd filmed with you doing Cold Shot
Yes.
and
Yeah.
knew you were a writer anyway,
Mm.
so I hired you on, and
Yeah. Most
I'd
most
worked.
appreciate. I've really enjoyed writing for it as well. It's been fun.
I knew my friend PJ Montgomery.
Hmm.
I'd worked with him actually on Supermarket Matters, which was my first big voice acting role, as I said before. And his writing was incredible. He also knew Matt Troy as a writer. I knew Matt Troy creatively from things like stuff that PJ Montgomery had been involved in anyway.
Sure.
And PJ vouched for him, and so I gave him one of the scripts to work on as well. And then Danielle Lade, I'd worked with her partner doing stuff when we were younger and in acting and things. And I knew she had chops in writing as well, so I gave her one of the scripts as well. So I suddenly had 4 writers to do the middle 4 scripts, and I could do the writing of the first and last one, which gave the bookends to the story.
Yeah.
And then PJ edited my scripts as well, so I had a more practiced hand cleaning up my writing, as it were,
Yeah.
making it more palatable, making the dialogue seem more natural and have more of a flow to it. So,
Mm.
and yeah, the scripts kind of came together, and it, I mean, lockdown was hitting at this point, and it was like, I've got this project. Why don't I do something with it? I've produced film projects, so why not produce an audio project? Especially as a voice actor, it
Yeah.
would give me a job role. I can give myself a role in it, and I can have a voice acting credit. But it also means I can create credits for everybody else who's kind
Mm.
of slightly stifled and creatively shut down by a lockdown during the COVID-19 scenario.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, I had a film. I had a film scripted and ready to go, and no way I could possibly shoot it. So I was like, "Yep, this sounds great," and it was really fun to write something very different from what I usually write.
mm,
But what amazed me, I think, is just how like you've got like a really nice deep lore to Aniline City already. Like you knew where everything was, and you were like, here's the industrial quarter, and here's the lake. There's like the Aniline City Lake, and it was all kind of set up, and you gave quite a lot of material as well, and reference
mm.
material to be like, it was very easy to write because I could picture it in my head. By the time we talked and I'd seen the reference material, I was like, I can see this city in my head. This is great.
Well, that's one of the beauties of having so much time to conceptualize all of this
Yeah.
for this project. It was like it's something that I'd had sort of sketched out, and then over time you go through revision and revision, and you start thinking about, oh, well, if I want to have a chase, I need a long straight road
Yeah.
here, and if I want to have somebody chasing an ambulance and not know where it's gone. Okay, well then there's more than one hospital in the city as well, because they could have gone to one or the other, and so you don't know which way they've gone. And
Yeah.
if I'm placing it within this area, within this state in America, where there is no city currently, it's going to need access to water facilities and plumbing facilities. Well, how does that happen? And if we have things like a major serial killer event in the city, I only want a certain amount of police officers to be involved. It's
Yeah.
like, okay, well, in that case, they don't have access to an adjacent city's facilities. There's only so many roads in and out of the city. It's also things like, because I want it to be an analogy of New York, Chicago, and Detroit. Okay, there's 3 roads that lead out of this city.
Yeah.
One in the direction of New York, one in the direction of Chicago, one in the direction of Detroit.
Yeah.
And so it's like, right, okay, well, why aren't there any other roads? Okay, well, there's mountains here. This is in a
Sure.
bowl. It's in a, and it's just sort of all these things start to come together. The more and more I thought about it, the more and more I rationalized this stuff,
Mm.
which I guess comes from things like doing playing games like Dungeons and Dragons
That,
and
yeah,
having to
DMing would
write,
definitely help.
writes those campaigns. But it even stretches further back than that, where as a child, my dad would tell me and my brother stories, but it would be something he'd come up with on the fly.
Mm.
And so sometimes he'd ask us, where does this come from? And we'd also play, as we got older, we'd play games like, the idea of 20 questions, but instead there's a body on the ground. Ask me questions and I'll tell you what I can see. And it's like
Sure.
figure out how that person died. And it's like, okay, well, what's around them? And are there any visible
It's like
wounds?
playing a text adventure, but in real life. That's great.
Exactly that. Exactly that. There's no wounds on the body. Okay, well, what's the cause of death? Well, you figure it out. How have you done that? Well, okay, well, did they die of running out of air, or did they die? Is it a needle pinprick that we can't see? No, there's no wounds on the body. And okay, did they die because they were burned to death? No, the skin's intact. There's no wounds. Okay, cool. And you eventually find that they died because they froze to death. And I was like, well, why did they freeze to death? What else is in the room? Well, there's other bodies in the room. There's other bodies in the room.
You didn't ask the right questions.
They're hung up. There's hung up bodies in the room. Yeah, they're missing their heads. Oh my god, this is a horrific crime scene. And it's like, oh, they're human bodies. No, they're not human bodies. Oh, okay. And it turns out it's a meat locker, and the guy trapped himself inside his own meat locker and just froze to death because he was a butcher. And it's like, oh, okay, well, this makes sense now. But you got to ask the right questions to fill in that space and see that scene when you can't see it at all. And it's so playing games like that as a kid, it sets up that imagination and storytelling, and gets you thinking that way, I guess.
Yeah,
for me, anyway.
It really does feel like a wonderfully kind of fleshed out world that you've created. And I don't know how much you want to talk about in terms of the story, because I don't want to obviously spoil anything. But
I don't want to spoil the story of the actual the 6-part episode of the serial killer and following that, because that's the whole thing behind that. But certainly, as a world for Aniline City, we're telling a 6-part story of a serial killer, but my aim is to tell more stories within that city with different mediums. And so I've got an outline of a filming script for a video project, and then I've got another outline for which a writer is working on at the moment for another one-shot audio that isn't a multi-parter to record as well, provided the 6-parter goes well.
Well, from everything I've seen so far, it's going to be something pretty special. I was blown away by the cast. The people that you had auditioning for this was amazing.
Yeah, we were really lucky. I was so worried that we were only going to get like 50 to 100 people auditioning, and that we would have to just pick people from that
Make do. Yeah,
and see what happened. But we ended up getting over, I think it was over 1,250 auditions. It was such a huge amount, and I didn't expect that at all. I think partially because I think it was well planned out. We had a really good synopsis as to what was going on. Thankfully, due to the writing staff, the characters were much more fleshed out and had much more going on with them. And because I tried to give yourself and the other writers a lot of free rein to, within this world, this is where we need to go with it. But other than that, make the story your own.
Yeah, I think you pretty much did. I mean, you pretty much gave me the overall aim of the episode that I was writing, but within that, I had a lot of freedom. Yeah,
and it meant that we ended up with a much more rich world because of that, which I am eternally grateful for. But it meant that when people were looking at the project, they're like, okay, well, this already has, because we created things like little bits of viral content and little snippets of video to flesh out the world, and it meant that people coming to audition go, well, they've already created something.
Yeah.
They've already started this process. So this isn't a flash in the pan, oh, it's a project, and
this is going to happen. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's the idea behind it. So a lot of people got involved, and we got really lucky that some incredible actors auditioned for it. And the entire cast is fantastic.
Incredible,
and I'm still, there's a couple of little bits I'm having meetings with actors in order
Hmm.
to them for them to record that. It's just a line here and a line here to tidy things
Sure.
up and finish off with the edit. Um, but everything's coming together incredibly, and everybody's bouncing off of each other. And I actually think we got some incredible performances where actors were bouncing off each other, and it changed the way scenes panned out because of the energy they brought to it.
It's
And
wonderful
it,
when that happens in the right way. It's just like this is
yeah,
unexpected in the best possible way.
yeah, it's part of that creative magic, I think,
Mm.
that when things like that happen and you just go, there was no way we could plan for this or think it would happen, and it just happened. So yeah, looking forward to hopefully finishing that off and putting it out that
Yeah.
soon. It's one of those things where it's always takes longer than you think it does.
Yeah, because you're currently in the kind of post production kind of. Well, I suppose you're not. I suppose you've still got a few bits, but you're pretty much into post production now, right?
Yeah, all the key dialogue from all the main characters are all done.
Hmm.
It's just the occasional pickup lines, and there's a couple of little characters just where there's a couple of voice actors that weren't free
Yeah.
at the times where I wanted to do things. And so, yeah, it's just putting things together, and I'm putting together soft edits so that those actors have something to act to,
Yeah.
rather than just because you don't want voices where you've got two people talking who have never actually talked to each
And
other,
it
and the
sounds
voices
like
clash.
yeah.
So having one person's side of things and the other acting being able to hear that and then talk back to them creates much more of a dialogue and things. So it's just things like that, which at the moment, which I had to take an editing break because I broke my arm on a film set.
Oh no.
So, which I can tell you about that if you like.
Yeah, go for it. I know you'd broken your arm. I didn't know you did it on a film set though. So what happened?
Yeah. So I was filming for a film which I can talk about a bit now, which is called The Fence, which was a short that got several million views on YouTube, and it's all set in Bristol,
Right.
and it's about back in the 80s. A young guy gets his motorcycle that he's just bought stolen, and so he goes around to all the pawnbrokers, the fences in the area,
Yeah.
and the local crime gangs and stuff
Oh,
to kind of
fence.
find,
I get it.
yeah,
I'm with you.
who nicked my motorcycle. I want it back.
Hmm.
And they, it got such notoriety that they then got funding to make a feature film out of it. And
Oh, awesome. Hmm.
it's got some actors from British TV, and there's a Game of Thrones actor in there,
Very
and
cool.
things, which is really good fun. It's the guy who plays Lancel Lannister in
Okay.
Game of Thrones. A guy called Eugene, and he's
Hmm.
such a lovely person. And we got to hang out on set and shoot a scene together, which was really good fun. And I play a very, very tiny role of a hefty bloke who is owing money to gangs. And basically, I go on screen, I get chased, I get beaten up, and then I get told to bugger off whilst
Right.
people have business to do, and so I leave, and
Hmm.
that's pretty much it. The sum of my role is blubbing like an idiot, getting beaten up and threatened, and then leaving.
Yeah.
But it was a really great set. Like the production crew were incredible, and everything about it was really awesome to be a part of.
Yeah.
But on the day before we even started doing wardrobe or filming anything, we were just shown the set and were told the main beats of what we were doing, so blocking the scene
Yeah.
effectively. And this is before we're even running through stunt stuff, and it's like, well, you got to run from here to there and then over to there to this car, and then you get beaten up. Uh and as part of this, when I'm coming towards this car, I get shoved towards the car and go off balance,
Right.
to then get beaten up.
Hmm.
So we were just blocking out and just running in this car park, and I'm running towards the car, looking back over my shoulder,
Oh no.
to see the guy behind me, and the pacing of where we're going to get shoved here. And I hit a patch of gravel, and
Oh
my foot
no.
just slid out underneath me, and it meant that I landed arms out but twisted, so one arm in front of the other,
Oh
and so
god.
all my weight went down on one arm, and
Oh.
cut my hands open on the gravel on the floor, and I was like, oh, that's a nasty sprain.
And then like
And
4 days later, you're like, oh, actually,
yeah, on set, I started to realize it was going a bit numb, and I was losing
oh,
the ability to straighten or bend my arm. And I
yeah.
was like, "Well, that's a really bad sprain." And the first aiders on set were incredible.
Mm-hmm.
They patched me up. They looked after me, and we went through all the paperwork for it. I was very embarrassed, but they were very lovely and said, "Don't be embarrassed. Accidents
Yeah,
happen."
yeah. These
And
things happen. Sure.
they were extremely professional and looked
Mm.
after me very, very well. And they looked at it and they go, "We don't think it's broken. We think it's just a nasty sprain. Do you want to call it a day and go to the hospital?" I was like, "No, all these people are here. All these, they've had to, because it's set in the 80s, so they've got all these
Oh
beautiful
goodness, yeah.
80s cars. They had these Ford Escort Mark
Oh,
Ones and Mark Twos
amazing.
and things like that. It was beautiful. But I was like, I don't want to ruin a day's shoot.
No.
Um, due to an injury, and my part of the shooting is only short. My part's going to be done today, so
Yeah.
putting off to another day, it's going to ruin the sequence of things. So I'm like, yeah, it hurts, but
We'll
I can
just be
still act.
careful
I can
and
still do
yeah.
my role.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we did the whole day of shooting, and it was
I
agony,
can
but
imagine.
we got it done. We got it done, and we did really well, and I was really pleased with how it all ended up. And at the end of the day, it was all really stiff, really painful. I was like, okay, no worries, I'm going to go home and rest. So I
Yeah.
went home, rested, and I put a little like a belt around my wrist and around my neck so I could keep it like this the whole time. And I
Yeah.
was like, oh, it's a sprain, just rest it, ice it,
Yeah.
take some ibuprofen or whatever, and it'll be fine. And then I think it was a day or two later, my partner Sarah saw me from behind and saw the back of my arm, like up here,
Oh no.
and it was black and
Oh.
purple and green, and it was
You could.
dark. And she was just like,
Oh.
"What is that?" And I had, because I'd kept it like
You
this.
just hadn't
I then
seen it, yeah.
I lifted up, and it was from here all the way down
Oh my
here,
god.
just discolored. And she's like, "You're going to hospital, mate."
Yep, that's a
I was
break.
like, "Yeah, fair enough." I went to the hospital. They X-rayed it, and they were like, "Yeah, you've broken your arm."
Oh
I
no.
was like, "Oh, well, that's why that hurts so much."
Yeah, I mean, I
That's
guess
why
that
it's not
explains it.
healing quickly. Um, so yeah, they looked after me. Thankfully, didn't need it to be put in plaster cast or anything. It was just in a sling,
Right, yeah,
and they gave me all the good painkillers, and
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's now thankfully all healed up and sorted now.
Yeah, wow. Like I said, I knew you'd broken your arm. I didn't know you did it on a film set, so that's interesting.
Yeah,
Is that
doing you could kind of say I did it doing a stunt, but not quite.
kind of? I mean,
I was blocking out a stunt before we
yeah,
even got to the
yeah.
stunt.
So, any idea when that's going to be released? Is that
They currently have a Kickstarter, just to get the last bit of
Mhm.
funding for the final edit and music, which is a hard part of it as well, licensing music to put in the film. And obviously set in the 80s, they want to get some classic 80s bangers. But that comes with a price tag. So they're
Yes.
seeing what they can get that way in order to finish the edits and get it out there, and hopefully a UK cinema release, which would be very cool.
Awesome. Yeah, that would be
That'd be the
great.
first time seeing my face in cinema, which would be amazing.
That would be incredible. So, well, speaking of cinema, before you go, I mean, you started off this this podcast telling me that you'd gone to the cinema. I'm really curious. I haven't seen it. I have heard some horror stories about it, but I'm curious. What did you make of Resident Evil: Welcome to Raccoon City?
So Resident Evil Welcome to Raccoon City is a brand new thing. They
Yeah.
are ignoring both the Paul W.S. Anderson movies, I think, originally.
Mila Jovovich.
And they're ignoring the animated movies, and they're ignoring the games. So it's a fresh retelling, and it's a retelling of both the first Resident Evil game and the second Resident Evil game at the same time.
That is
so that parallels
ambitious.
but they've done that by simplifying things
Sure.
hugely and changing some details.
Yeah.
So you've got Claire Redfield coming to Raccoon City, and encountering Leon Kennedy, the rookie,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
which is Resident Evil 2, and she's looking for her brother, Chris Redfield. And then you've got Chris Redfield and Jill Valentine and Wesker and Bravo team of stars going to the Arkley Mountain Manor to investigate something that is occurring out there. I think they say it's like a mangled body or something.
Yeah.
And so you've got these two things happening at once.
So they happen
bouncing
simultaneously in the movie.
Yes.
Right.
So and that kind of is a neat way of having that they're apart but can come together in the end kind of thing. Which is kind of basically what happens in the movies, but to a lesser extent, that's what happens in the game, sorry. But to a lesser extent in Resident Evil 2, Claire doesn't actually find Chris. So
no.
But they do in this version.
Mm-hmm. And I mean Resident Evil 2 2 and 3 kind of happen next to each other, not 1 and 2 in the games, because 2 is set after 1.
3 is ignored. Nemesis is ignored,
right.
And there's no Mr. X, and they don't mess with those elements of it. They just go, this is a corporate town, and stuff occurs, and the zombies get released, whatever. You've got Umbrella at the exit to the cities, barring anyone trying to leave. And the plot occurs. Now, I'm going to attempt to... Obviously, that's slightly in the realm of potential spoilers. If nobody wants spoilers, then skip ahead slightly. But I'll try not to go too heavy on spoilers. They changed characters. You've got Chris Redfield, who is your typical jock meathead kind of guy, and that is the same as
that
the
kind of follows.
Anyway, that's fine. They've made Albert Wesker a carbon copy. He is exactly the same. He is also another military meathead. The other guys in the team are also muscled meatheads, and they don't look that dissimilar to each other. So in order to separate Leon out from those guys, they made him very different.
Okay.
And unfortunately, they made him just somebody who makes a lot of mistakes.
Okay. Because he's a rookie in Resident Evil 2, but he's pretty capable.
Yeah, but also he's an eager young rookie who has aspirations of being a good cop.
Yeah.
Whereas the Leon in this one is... The first time you see him, he is hungover, getting out of bed, drinking a beer before going on the job.
Oh, no, that's the opposite of Leon. Yeah.
I'm trying not to use...
See, I can imagine
bad language. Am I allowed to swear on this?
Yeah, you swear as much as you want.
Oh, okay, they make him a fuck up.
Yeah,
they make him an absolute... he's been given this job in a dead end town because he's a fuck up.
I always got the
impression...
impression...
you can go be rookie over here because you're terrible. It's like, oh, wow.
Oh my god. I always got the impression that Leon was pretty much the fan favorite of all characters, so I would have thought of all the ones you're going to change, don't do that. I could imagine Barry being hungover, maybe having a couple of beers before he starts his day, but
Barry's not even in it. So
no Barry. Oh man.
Yeah, no Barry Burton. They made Leon Kennedy this kind of this bit of a jackass, really, and he has no idea what's going on throughout the entire movie. He's like, the fuck is this? What the fuck is that? It's just like, so it's kind of, it doesn't ruin that character, but it just makes that character very different.
Yeah.
And I feel like they've done that to differentiate him from the rest of the meathead jocks that are who are the rest of the male cast, which is weird. I think they did a great job with Claire.
Oh, that's good.
Scolladero. I don't know how to pronounce her surname, but she's fantastic casting. I thought I actually liked a lot of the cast. I think they all did a great job. Jill Valentine is brilliant. They've made her one of the guys in the team, which works well as that dynamic. It's a much better version of the character than you get in the original game.
Certainly in the original,
famously badly acted. But they just made that character fit in that squad. It makes sense that she's there with the rest of them, and
they made her more like Jill from later games than she was in the first one.
Kinda, yeah. They I mean, in the trailer, you even see that one of the people succumbing to the disease writes "itchy tasty" on a
I
window in
saw
blood.
that, and it's like, guys, that was, that was in a diary excerpt. It's way more corny if you go and write it on a mirror.
But I mean, the film's full of stuff like that, where you
Mhm.
go, like somebody gets handed some keys at one point, and there's like a diamond key and a club key and things like that, and they don't explain it, and it kind of doesn't need to.
No,
But
no.
it's, fans of the game go, oh yeah, I know that. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, I know that. Oh yeah, I know that. And there's lots of those little moments of, oh yeah, where if you're a fan of the games, there's loads of stuff to keep you going. Huh, that's cool.
Mhm.
And if you're not a fan of the games, it's not too jarring.
Sure.
Like, you can kind of forgive it.
Mhm.
I would say if you don't know the games, it's just a cheesy zombie movie.
Sure.
And if you're a fan of the games, there's enough fan service and fun stuff in there that it's fun.
I mean,
But
I think, yeah, it's a difficult line, isn't it? Because I think films do, you're adapting a video game, a beloved property, but at the same time, it does need to be accessible to people who have never played the game before. So, it's a difficult situation.
so they simplify a whole bunch of stuff. Like the Arkley Manor, you don't see a lot of it. They
Right.
just kind of there's a whole bunch of dark corridors and slowly opened doors, and there's a library and stuff. But then they quickly go into
Raccoon.
medical lab facilities
Oh, okay.
um,
Right.
underneath Raccoon, which is all interconnected.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's fun. It's forgettable, but it could have been worse. However, the last 15 minutes,
Oh, boy.
it's like they got bored and they just go,
They just gave
"That'll
up.
do.
Oh, no.
Let's just give the rest of this dialogue for the last 15 minutes. Let's give it to the Saturday boy, who's just turned up."
Oh, dear.
And just suddenly all the dialogue becomes like the dialogue from the earlier films, just the cheesiest, worst lines, and kind of was a bit jarring towards the end. And also, most of the effects are reasonably practical
Oh, that's cool.
throughout most of the film, and then again, the last 15 minutes, heavy CGI,
All
and it's
right.
not the most
Just jarring.
high budget CGI. It could be worse, but
Mhm.
it also could have been a lot better, and so yeah, it kind of doesn't stick the landing. It doesn't quite get away with it being, and I was left going, it was a film.
Yeah. I
It
must
was an
admit,
experience.
I saw the trailer and I thought, oh, it kind of, on the one hand, it looks awful, but on the other hand, I can really see what they're trying to do, and they're really. It looked like there was a lot of passion in the trailer. You're like, these are fans of the games for sure. I can see there's like direct shots from each game that I can kind of see. You have that classic zombie munching turning around shot that's in the original FMV.
Yeah, you can tell that they have definitely played
Yeah.
the first two games and knew it well
Mm-hmm.
in terms of being able to shoot it and
Yeah.
direct it and write it in that way. So yeah, it does feel like such a love letter, and I would actually say there are some decent jump scares.
That's good. I mean, your
There's a
review
few
is more
times that
positive than I expected. So
I was taken by surprise by some of the stuff where, it's something's coming towards you and you expect it to lunge at you, but instead, clever girl comes across from one side and
nice.
blindsides you, and it's like, I was like, oh, that was good. And there's some creepy children content, which, as soon as you start making children
Kids
creepy,
are
I'm like,
always the
okay, I'm
creepiest.
scared.
Yep.
That's
I
always gonna be
agree.
scary.
Like, make kids creepy. I'm instantly, yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, I don't even know what I would rate it. Maybe like the dreaded nail in the coffin that is the 7 out of 10 review.
Well, that's still higher than I'd put a lot of the, the previous Resident Evil movies. Certainly the latter ones.
There is a view of the previous series of
Mhm.
movies, which I love, which is the fact that Paul W.S. Anderson filmed a series of Resident Evil movies,
Yes.
and his wife, Mila Jovovich, is the lead character.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
The entire series is Paul W.S. Anderson going, look how beautiful my wife is.
He loves his wife. Like,
He loves his wife so much, and
Like-
he basically wrote an entire series of films
Yeah.
about Resident Evil to show off how gorgeous his wife is and how awesome she
And
is.
he succeeds in that.
Yeah, and he does. And it's
I
just
mean...
like, what else are we going to do? Oh, well, let's put other cool people in the film with my gorgeous wife. And if you view it from that lens, those films are so much fun because you can tell
Yeah.
they had fun on set.
You're
And
right, man.
Paul is literally filming these films going, my wife's beautiful. Like, you can see every shot is like, how can I show her to be the most gorgeous person and to look cool and to have fun? And it's just sort of like, if you view it through that lens, those films are great because you can tell how much he cares.
You're absolutely right. Like Paul W.S. Anderson and Rob Zombie are like two directors you cannot deny that really love their wives. Like 100%.
Yeah.
No, that's cool, man. I'm glad you had a good time with it. I've been really curious about this one. I've heard some like massively negative reviews, and then some reasonably positive, and I'm kind of curious.
It does sit in the middle. Like I say, it doesn't stick the landing. It ends up in being in not good cheese fest by the end.
Right.
But the cheese fest throughout most of it is enjoyable.
It's great.
I had fun with it. But I will say I went in with a very low bar of expectation.
Yeah, the trailers didn't do me much favors, I don't think. But
no, and I mean, video game films are still where comic book films were
absolutely
20 plus years ago.
Yep.
You know, where the filmmakers aren't creating serious good films that happen to be video games, or in this case happen to be comic book films. Like, we now have a great renaissance of comic book films where they're good films that happen to be comic book films, and that's what I hope we'll eventually get with video game films. I'm hoping things like the upcoming Last of Us TV series will show people this is how it's done, because you've got Neil Druckmann, who directed the game, being involved in the series, and
things
I hope
improving.
things like that will make a difference.
I mean, things like the I mean, not necessarily live action, but like the animated Castlevania series was tremendous,
incredible.
So I kind of feel like we are turning a corner. You know, we're getting there. We're getting there. But you're right; it's in its infancy right now.
I did even feel like the Alicia Vikander Tomb Raider had loads of problems, but it wasn't that bad. I enjoyed it. I had fun with it.
I must admit,
it's got some super cheese moments that make me cringe. So it's not perfect by a long stretch, but there was some really good moments of it where there's some parts where it takes itself seriously and does a good job with it.
It's a weird movie because it kind of tries. It seems like it was like, we're gonna do like the game did, where it was like, we're gonna do a more realistic take on Tomb Raider. The movie was like, we're gonna do a more realistic movie of Tomb Raider, but then it goes ridiculous in places, and that contrast is really odd. But I mean, I've only seen it the once, but I remember it being okay. I was entertained by Tomb Raider. Yeah.
An example I give from video game movies is that you've got the two schools of thought which irritate me. So, do you remember the Doom movie with Carl Urban?
I do indeed.
My biggest problem with the Doom movie is it's two films being filmed at the same time.
Yes.
You've got Carl Urban and Rosamund Pike, who are doing a serious science fiction horror movie. Yeah. And they are doing their best to elevate that script
to
really be something really gritty. You then have The Rock and friends, who are in a comedy sci-fi romp, and they are stomping all over everything. And these two things are so jarring because they're going on at the same time.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
And often in the same shot. And it's just like, what the hell's going on? And it doesn't work. And I think if you either put yourself full into that crazy romp of silliness, it can be fun in the right thing. If the IP works in that context.
Yes.
Or if you put yourself in that taking things seriously and making it real and relatable, and the rules making sense within that world, I think you can create something really awesome. And I'm just kind of waiting for somebody to do something in that way. Like, I was just playing through the Redux version of Alan Wake recently.
Oh, dude, I haven't played the Redux, but I love the original Alan Wake. Was a great game.
Yeah, the Redux. I mean, it's a beautiful lick of paint on what
Hmm.
is already a great game.
It's all you
There's
want,
some,
really.
yeah, there's some clunky controls in there from where it was an earlier game,
Yeah,
and it's a little bit clunky, but they just didn't touch it, and
yeah,
I respect. It doesn't need touching to me, but I was reminded whilst playing it how much of it is actually filmed content,
yeah.
and it has that sort of Twin Peaks-esque
Oh,
feel to it,
they love
and
Twin Peaks. Yeah.
that creepy sort of essence to it, and the filmed content still obviously works now with upgraded graphics even more so.
Yeah.
I was like, this would work as a series. This would work as a film. I mean, you play it like it's a TV series.
Yeah.
You reach the end of chapter one, and credits roll for chapter one,
Yeah.
and there's music over the credits, just like you would have if you're watching a TV series.
And
And
I
it's like,
love when you start the game, it does the recap stuff. It's like previously on Alan Wake, and go, yeah, I love all that.
exactly.
It's great.
Yeah, and yeah, it gives you that feeling of of like Twin Peaks or Kingdom Hospital or whatever, where you've got those creepy supernatural vibes, and it works. And I was just like, this is so close to already being a good video game TV series. It
Yeah.
like you'd have to film a few extra scenes with all the footage that already exists, and it's
And
done.
it's done. Yeah, you're there. Yeah.
But if they can do that, then I think it's possible to film a good film that's game related, or a good TV series that's game related. And I'm just kind of like chomping at the bit for it to be done.
I agree. There's so much scope. There's so many stories, great stories in video games, going right back to, the 80s, 90s. Some fantastic epic stories that have been told. That, the right director, the right crew, the right writers, it could happen.
Yeah, and the difficulty is as well, you're competing with a medium where rather than
You can't
sitting back
compete.
and watching,
Yeah,
you are literally playing it. So the
yeah,
stakes are higher because you're invested. You've put time into this character and effort into this character. So when the mistakes happen, that's on you
yeah.
and you feel it. Whereas TV and film, you're removed, you're passively watching it.
Mm.
So for them to get it right, they really need to drill down to an audience and capture them in that way. Because the gaming community will want that real passion and grit and everything in there to be right, because they've already seen it done so well.
Yeah,
But also because the non-gaming community don't have that love for it already. They're not already on
yeah. They
side.
they don't have that reverence for the source material. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're kind of serving two masters, and it's very difficult to do that.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna definitely check out Welcome to Raccoon City. It was kind of on my list anyway, as a I'll get to it for sure. But yeah, I'm kind of curious. Your reviews kind of piqued my interest.
Got the original Resident Evils back there as well, by the way.
Excellent. I don't have them on. Oh, you've got them on big box PC. Lovely.
Yeah,
I've got them on the PS1. I don't have them on PC, but yeah. Oh man, I it's nice. It's so nice to see some big box PC games.
Yeah, I got little collection back there of some of my favorite ones, but yeah, when you watch Welcome to Raccoon City, I would love to hear your thoughts on it.
I will absolutely give it to you. Before you go, is it too soon? Is it too cheeky to ask when are we likely to ballpark here at Aniline City? Is it kind of? I mean,
I was hoping to get it out sometime before Christmas, but the likelihood of that,
that's 2 weeks away.
that is slim now. Just because the dialogue is the thing that's taken longer, and that's what I've got to finish off. Then I've already got a lot of the sound effects sourced, but we've got to put them in the scene, mix all of that, the sound effects and the vocals, and then there is the music that's going to be going with it as well, which will take a while to compose. So I'm hoping February, but that might be optimistic.
Awesome. Well,
But
quarter one. Let's call it quarter one.
that's a better way to do it,
2022. Yeah. Well, I'm thoroughly looking forward to it, and thank you for bringing me in on the project. It was absolutely a joy to write. It was great.
It's been my pleasure, my honor. Like, you've been an incredible person to work with on multiple occasions now.
Yeah, well, hopefully more to come.
with Called Shots, but also with
Yeah.
Aniline City. So I love working with you. It's good.
Yeah,
fun.
man, and right back at you. It's been a blast, and hopefully more to come in the near future. Is there anything you'd like to plug before we go? I know you've got Upshot gigs coming up, right? For one thing.
Yeah, Upshot. We're finishing off the Upshot album, which should hopefully come out Q1 next year as well. I'm also working on some other little music projects to put out before then. Obviously, voice acting. I've got a lot of irons and fires there, but I'm kind of under NDA for a lot of them, so I can't talk about them. But you can find me on social medias if you look for JD Kelly voice actor. Aniline City you can find on Instagram and on our website aniline.city. But yeah, I'm on most social. Type in a lot of the projects that we've talked about, things like Deacon Suite, Barris, and everything else, and obviously things like Cold Shot and stuff. You can find stuff.
I'll put links in the description to all of those things, and I might even put I think I'll put the teaser to Aniline City at the end of this, because I really love that music. The person who got to do that music, it's some good stuff.
Yeah, Alex Arpeggio Creative. He's such an incredible composer.
It's
perfect. And he's doing the sound mixing for the effects and the voices as well. And he'll be composing the rest of the music as well. So yeah, a lot of his handiwork on there is incredible. And he plays drums in Upshot as well. So.
Oh, fantastic. I didn't know that. That's great. Well, Joe, thank you for coming on, man. This has been a blast. We'll have to do it again in the near future.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll catch you next time.